Welcome to another day of... Thank you for joining me. So this week we are continuing learning about our favorite thing,
food.
And so we are going to be reading a book about making bread. And like Jalen and DeAndre did last week, it is a fun, cool process, and I challenge you all to try to make your own bread. So this book is called Bread Lab. It's written by Kim Benchesky and Bethany Econopoly, and it's illustrated by Hannah Choi. So go grab yourself a snack, maybe a nice little sandwich or a nice piece of toast.
And let's get ready to read.
It was a sleepy Saturday morning for some people, but Iris had to wake up early. All of her pets were hungry, and animals never sleep in on weekends. Iris needed to hurry if she was going to feed her dog Charlie 2 cats, 3 rabbits, 4 fish, and 5 chickens before Aunt Mary arrived. Iris liked to call Aunt Mary Plant Mary because she was a plant scientist. It made Aunt Mary laugh every time. Charlie barked. She was all hugs and smiles and boxes and bags, and she was on a mission.
Let's turn your kitchen into a bread lab, Iris,
she said. I hope you're up for making some whole wheat sourdough bread from scratch. How's that sound? Iris loved bread, toast with butter and blackberry jam especially. She was definitely going to need her notebook today. Aunt Mary pulled a jar from her bag slowly, like it was a treasure. Iris, meet Flora, she said. Iris peered deeply into the jar, but saw only goo. She's my starter, Aunt Mary explained. To make bread, you need a starter to start the process. Why did you give your starter a name? Asked Iris. Because I think of her as a pet, said Aunt Mary. Flora is full of microbes, creatures so small you can only see them with a microscope. I feed her every day, just like you feed Charlie here. I want to feed Flora, said Iris. What does she eat? Flour and water, said Aunt Mary. Sounds delicious, right, Charlie? Charlie would happily eat flour and water. When the microbes in Flora eat, they release bubbles, said Aunt Mary. Those bubbles make bread rise, and the bubbles are why bread is so
holy.
Wait a minute, what? Said Iris. Holy, as in bread with lots of little holes, said Aunt Mary. Iris didn't miss a beat. Whole wheat bread. Exactly, said Aunt Mary. Iris picked up the jar of goo. So, can we feed Flora now? Actually, I just brought Flora in a jar to show you what a starter looks like, said Aunt Mary. I used Flora to create a sourdough mix. Yesterday, I put a tablespoon of Flora in this bowl, along with some whole wheat flour and warm water, and stirred it all together. Now look, it's puffy and still growing. Smell it. It's yeasty sweet and just a bit tangy to put the sour in sourdough. Iris sniffed the sourdough mix. It smells like grass and lemons. Iris poked the pillowy mix with her finger. It sprang right back up. I think I'm hungrier than a microbe. I could cook eggs and toast for breakfast. Would you like some, Plant Mary? Charlie wagged his tail so wildly that Aunt Mary laughed. Absolutely. Look like we're all hungry. Good timing, too. The sourdough mix still needs more time to rise. As Iris munched her toast, she picked up the package of bread and started to read the ingredient list. But it was full of words she couldn't pronounce. Wow, did you bring all this stuff to make your sourdough bread? No need. Our recipe
only has 4 ingredients, said Aunt Mary.
Just 4? Asked Iris. Okay, let's see. The sourdough mix has Flora, whole wheat flour, and water, right? What's the 4th thing? Aunt Mary waggled the salt shaker. Salt, said Iris. Right, said Aunt Mary. We have everything we need to get started. Iris whispered into the bowl. She measured exactly the right amount of flour, water, and salt, and then added each ingredient to the sourdough mix. Iris imagined the tiny microbes in flora happily gobbling up the food and burping out bubbles. Use your hands to mix it all together, said Aunt Mary. Iris washed her hands and then dug in. The sticky dough felt good, oozing between her fingers like mud pies. Aunt Mary leaned over the bowl. Great work, Iris. Now it needs to rest. But not us. Let's clean up our bread lab. Are you ready for the next step? Kneading the dough. Aunt Mary put the gooey glob on the counter.
Kneading the
Dough? Iris asked. Said Aunt Mary. Yes, we knead it, but we also
Knead it.
Kneading makes the dough stronger and less sticky. Iris stretched, folded, scraped, and turned the ooey dough again and again until her arms felt like they might fall off. Is the dough strong enough now, Aunt Mary? Her aunt gave it a poke. I wish I could say yes, but the dough still needs you. Then I'll knead it, said Iris. She flexed her arm muscles like a superhero and kept on going. You can see she's kneading it. So she keeps pushing it and pushing it. After the kneading was finished and the dough had time to rest, Aunt Mary showed Iris the next step, folding.
Stretch, fold,
Iris chanted. Now we let it rest again, said Aunt Mary. Then we do this 2 more times. Iris made sketches of every step in her notebook. Iris could see the bubbles form while the dough was resting. The microbes are busy. It's like magic, she said. Magic? More like science, said Aunt Mary. Can the dough please be ready? Aunt Mary begged Iris. Charlie whimpered. Aunt Mary laughed. You're both in luck. It's time to shape the dough. She showed Iris how to fold the dough into a log to fit in the loaf pan. The dough needs about 3 hours to rest, so now we can take a break too, said Aunt Mary.
Finally,
said Iris. This means we have plenty of time for a picnic in the park. What a feast, said Aunt Mary. And all the food you brought, apples, peanut butter, blackberry jam, chocolate, and crackers, came from plants. Did I ever tell you why I became a plant scientist? I don't think so, said Iris. Why did you? Ever since I was your age, I wanted to grow food. Now I help farmers grow food, Aunt Mary said, feeding a crumb to a hungry ant. In fact, the flour for the bread we're making came from wheat grown by farmers I know. I never knew plant science had anything to do with food. No one thought about plants more than Plant Mary did. Iris loved that about her. Time flew by as they ate their lunch, identified dandelion parts, and found animal shapes in the clouds. When Iris and Aunt Mary got back home, Iris screamed,
No!
All she could see was the pan of dough and Charlie's drooling jaws. All that kneading for nothing. Iris lunged for the pan just in time. The bread was saved. I guess Charlie wanted to be our bread tester, said Iris. Good thing he didn't eat that dough, because it's still rising, said Aunt Mary. He would be one sick dog. Iris imagined Charlie swelling up like a hot air balloon and floating away. Let's get this dough into the oven. Iris thought the smell of baking bread was the best smell in the world. Finally, Aunt Mary opened the oven door. It's ready. She took the loaf pan out to cool. Iris could hear the crusts crackle and pop. It even sounds delicious. Charlie barked. Iris's parents were back. Mom, Dad, we turned the kitchen into a bread lab, said Iris. She held up the loaf like a trophy. Who wants to try our special home-baked whole wheat sourdough bread? Everyone did, of course, especially Charlie. Aunt Mary, Iris, and her parents all gathered close. Iris took a big bite of her slice.
Mmm.
She said, smiling at Aunt Mary. They really did it. They baked their very own loaf of bread, and everyone loved it. Charlie liked his crunchy bit of crust too, but he was easy to impress. Mmm. Iris opened her notebook and wrote, Our bread tastes nutty, sweet, and a little bit tart. Aunt Mary leaned to seal her notes. Hey, that's a pretty good description of you, Iris, he said. And you too, said Iris. Iris couldn't wait to bake with Aunt Mary again. It was a good day in the bread lab. Charlie thought so too. And in the back of this book, you're going to find some bread facts, and you're going to find a nice, cool recipe for how to make bread. I'm going to grab my reward. I still have the most books read on Get Epic. Somebody needs to crush me. Who's it going to be? Your challenge for today, I want you to go find a food in your cabinet, any type of food, and figure out which parts of it came from plants. Did any part of that cookie come from plants? Any part of that ice cream? Any part of that cheese? I don't know. Find out and send it to me. I love you all. I miss you all. I'll see you at 2:30 for our next Zoom.